Loibner-Waitkus.
All right. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the class for my first set of actual notes about the class. This should be pretty quick. You're reading last week, and again, I will always post the week after the reading so you have time to do your reading response. And you didn't have a reading response this week. I've had several questions, but I just wanted you to read the preface, which is, two and a half pages. But I did want to go through a couple of things in this preface, and some of the other things to explain the class as a whole. So we're going to start first talking about race in America in the textbook and look at some of the quotes that they use in the preface. What is needed is a new way of thinking about race for a society quite new. This book addresses that pressing need. Again, this is what makes this class a little different. Most of the time, in the past, African American studies classes have been taught from the perspective of we read really old writings from slavery, post-slavery civil rights movement, and that kind of thing. And this book addresses, has the two authors who address really pressing more current needs, but also they don't really address it as much in the preface as it actually is in the textbook. We do go back and look at the history of race relations and that sort of thing, so it doesn't just deal with the issues of today. So that's one aspect to consider. Another quote that I thought was interesting was, "Throughout, race in America treats racial inequality rather not as some hot-button issue to be debated in loose, unsystematic fashion, but as a complex sociological phenomenon properly understood only through critical socioanalysis that arrives at conclusions after sifting through the best available evidence." Okay, this is a complicated way of saying that this book actually is not just, opinion. This is stuff that they've based on both socioanalysis and evidence, numbers-based, statistical evidence, and things that are empirical rather than just someone's opinion on something. Now, we do get plenty of opinion, but again, they are basing a lot of things on fact and evidence. So that's one of the things that I like about this book. They also note that we seek to offer you, in short, a way of thinking about race that you can apply in your everyday lives. And again, this goes for African Americans as well as whites, as well as any other ethnic group that may be in this class. Again, if you're white, you may, think you're the least racist person on the planet and realize some of the things that you do may be, and not even realize it. Or you could, realize you don't do any of these things. As African Americans, again, you may notice race discussed in a different way than you're used to. And so, again, I really like the way that this applies to your everyday life. Finally, the last quote from the preface that I use is, "This conversation might make you feel uncomfortable, since topics as important and as personal as race are difficult to discuss." And that's true. At times you'll be reading this and you will be uncomfortable. A lot of Caucasian students, again, will feel a little uncomfortable with things or want to argue with the textbook about the statement. Some African Americans may feel that way about some of the claims that they make. And again, I noted earlier, I do not agree with 100% of what they say, but 99.9. And so, again, think about those things and push yourself to think, does it really apply? Is this really the case? Because I think usually you'll discover, well, I think they're right after all. I do want to move into a little bit of a preface for this class, and I said some things in last week's video. You noticed the video quality. I've learned some production things since then, so things have gotten a little better, but I do want to talk about preface for this class. And again, we go back to their quote about these topics being uncomfortable, and things will be uncomfortable. And I'm going to give you my quote one more time. Again, I don't want you to be afraid of what you have to, of saying your opinions in this class, but again, if you debate whether or not something you're about or going to say is in this class will be perceived as racist, it's probably racist, and that tends to be true for that sake. Again, let's don't get into a sort of debate is one thing, a sort of screaming match, an insulting match. Again, we see what goes on with Facebook. Again, especially lately, I've seen it with the Black Lives Matter, then Blue Lives Matter, then All Lives Matter, then, and just sort of getting out of hand. And, a lot of the posts I do find to be pretty racist in their thoughts, and then can be relatively dogmatic in some cases from the other side. So, again, we want you to think here, but if the point is just to, cause a lot of drama in here, this may not be the best class for you. So think through what you've got to say. If someone is saying something that's offensive, don't engage, and let me deal with that, and we'll move through. As always, if you have any questions or anything else, just give me a call and we'll talk it through. So I appreciate it, and hopefully this will be the shortest audio you have to listen to. Hopefully.